All right, welcome, comrades. All right, hi, y'all. Go ahead and get started. Very quickly here, I'll introduce myself. My name is Kara Toby. I'm calling in from Louisville, Kentucky. I am one of the co-chairs of the Green New Deal Campaign Commission. I'm so excited to see you all here. Super excited to be launching our next campaign. So with that said, I'll give you a little bit of a rough map of the evening. So we're going to start by recapping the first phase of our campaign, which is the Green New Deal slate. We'll introduce you to the next phase of our work, which is building for power. We're going to hear from comrades from across the country, some of our amazing DSA elected officials here with Hugo Soto Martinez from Los Angeles, Sarah Hanna-Stresta from Mid-Hudson Valley in New York. And then we're also going to be hearing from DSA leaders who have been fighting for a Green New Deal in their own towns. That would be Detroit DSA, Maine DSA, and Philly DSA as well. And finally, you'll hear from some of our fellow Green New Deal Campaign Commission members about how we are planning on rolling this out and how your chapter can get involved in the work. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide here. Amazing. Okay, so just to kind of do a brief overview here of our first phase of work, it is the first part of our campaign was really focused on electing socialists. Following the failures of the Build Back Better Act, the failures of the Biden administration when passing the Build Back Better Act and the Green New Deal for public schools at a federal level. Sorry, 1 second. My computer is getting all weird here, but we ultimately learned that there just weren't enough socialists in office that would be able to push for the types of legislation that we need in order to take power and win a Green New Deal. So last year, what we did is we set out to help build up eco-socialist electoral power with the Green New Deal slate. There were 11 candidates from across the country, and we helped get 4 of those candidates elected to office. Hugo Soto Martinez and Sarah Hanna-Stresta both in Los Angeles and Mid-Hudson Valley, respectively. We'll hear from them later tonight. And we'll also Rachel Ventura in Illinois and Elizabeth Epps in Colorado. So you can go on to the next slide here. Awesome. So what did we do to actually help support these candidates and help get them elected? We actually raised over $5,000 for the slate in total. We mobilized DSA members from across the organization and made over 10,000 dials in support of those candidates. We also developed over 15 policy memos and draft legislation on eco-socialist topics ranging from transit to environmental justice and more. So now we're going to move on into describing what our next phase of work is. So I'll go on. Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. That is building for powers. This is our phase 2 of our campaign here. So what is building for power, right? You can go into the next slide here. Awesome, thank you. So building for power, these campaigns here, it's going to be, they're going to be campaigns that present clear decarbonizing demands that have the potential to unite the working class, whether that be organized labor, tenants, transit riders, ratepayers, the environmental justice communities, to go into an open confrontation with the capitalist class. Now, whether that be the bosses at energy companies, the automakers, or housing developers, building for power campaigns aim to organize independent working class coalitions to fight on the terrain of the state, seeking to rebuild the public sector and the labor movement at the same time. What we understand is that DSA's real punching power comes from the chapter level. It's the members across the country, it's you all that are putting in the work in your communities that will make the Green New Deal come to life. We'll be supporting chapters that organize campaigns to improve, expand, and create and sustain public services that improve the public's quality of life, expand union coverage and strengthen union power, decarbonize and democratize public services, build a working class base, and create or even strengthen ties that we have with organized labor. So we're really, really excited here. Go on to the next slide. Awesome. You all may have seen that little fish graphic before, but for Building for Power, we're going to kind of shift the way of thinking here. The littler fish there that we see, those aren't individuals, as you might hear sometimes, but those little fish are going to be the chapters. And so what we know here is that when we can work together in an organized fashion, we can really take down the big fish, which here is going to be the bosses and the dirty / even green capitalists that are fighting their way in. We believe that by building and supporting work done at the chapter level, we're building our building for power nationally by developing our leaders, building our base of supporters, and creating material change, which shows that this works. It's not just some idea, it actually works. So speaking of the work, we're focusing on 4 strategic areas of work. That'll be public power, so that's taking democratic control of vital infrastructure, would be our energy utilities, and mandate that these agencies transition to renewable energy sources. Also focusing on green social housing, building publicly owned sustainable green social housing at the state and local levels, and potentially even retrofitting social housing to make sure that these buildings are not just better for the environment, but they decrease the amount of energy needed to heat or cool, which definitely helps our pocketbooks as well. Expanding public transit, that really can look like a bunch of different things, from installing bus rapid transit or light rail, designated bus lanes, shelters, signage, electric buses to the fleet. And we can do this by fighting for increased funding, not just for the expansion, but also to hire and train more operators that would increase frequency and route coverage. And finally, here we've got public spaces and facilities. So that's bigger than community gardens. It's more creating public recreational facilities which make free and universal leisure available to everybody. Think about public pools, for instance, as well as the important and necessary electrification and retrofitting of public facilities such as schools, clinics, libraries, etc. So we can do all of this alongside and with strong union labor. Now, what does that look like, right? So next up here, we've got Hugo Soto Martinez. He represents District 13, on the LA City Council, and he was elected to office in November of 2022. He's a member of DSA LA and spent the last 16 years at Unite Here, organizing with mostly immigrant women in the hotel industry to win healthcare, higher wages, and anti-harassment protections. Welcome, Hugo. Can you tell us a little bit more about your legislative priorities and how you see your work in City Council? Awesome, cool, thanks.
Sure, thank you so much. I hope everyone's doing well across the country. Well, yeah, I'm been a senior member of DSA LA, longtime organizer with Unite Here Local 11. And, I would say that this last election cycle was kind of historic in the city of Los Angeles. We ran a lot of grassroots candidates and, we won. And as a result of that, we've already been making a lot of inroads in the issues that you're talking about here. Now, every city is different. In the city of Los Angeles, we have what folks sometimes refer to a mini mayor system. In other words, a lot of the infrastructure that gets built out, whether that's buildings or bike lanes or electrification of buildings, think of anything that can happen within the district. The council member has power over that. And so, we've started with a very ambitious goals for the first term. The first of which is building out a true bike infrastructure within the district. Right now, by the way, in the district, just to put things in perspective, represents 250,000 people. It is a big, big district. And right now, we don't have a single foot of protected bike lanes. And so as a result of the connections that we made, we've been able to essentially look at the district and say, how are we going to build out the bike infrastructure within the district? And so we hope by the first term, and oh, by the way, that's been creating alliances with a lot of the different transit advocacy groups. Obviously, DSA has a group that's very passionate about that, but it's much broader in Los Angeles. And so we're literally going to take the district and say, how can we build out the network? And that's something that we have power to do. We don't have to go through the full city council because it's all within the district. And when you're a mini mayor, you can do that. The other things that we've looked at that are very connected to the Green New Deal is the electrification of buildings and the electrification of our city fleet. We literally have thousands of cars, thousands of buildings are built every single, well, not thousands, maybe hundreds of buildings are built every single year. And so there is appetite for the council on that already, but that has been accelerated. And I think the fight now is going to be is how do we make that happen? How do we conclude those victories? And then we move on to retrofitting or taking gas stoves and incentivizing, finding money in that. And so that's another thing that we're going to do. And of course, the last thing is now we do things a little weird in Los Angeles. We have an entire other board that focuses on a county-wide program when you deal with light rail or buses. But again, council members have just an amazing platform and voice. And so, LA County is, it's huge. I mean, just look it up. It's massive. It's bigger than something like it has more population than a lot of states. And so now the Metro Board is talking about electrification of the buses, how to create bus-only lanes throughout the district. And so we are working on all that stuff to happen here, sort of in the regional area. But I think this opportunity is like, it truly depends on the municipality that you're in. I think we were able to identify the things that we wanted to fight for, and we're like very much on the road to winning. Another thing that came up is this is where it gets a little tense, right? Is like a lot of the trades wanted to build a green hydrogen plant. Essentially, not to belabor the point, but it's essentially instead of burning natural gas, you're burning hydrogen. This is very different than using hydrogen for fuel cells. When you use hydrogen for fuel cells, there's no negative byproduct. When you burn hydrogen, it does release NOx and many other things. It's very explosive. And so because that decision had to go through the environmental committee, which is 5 people, even though I don't sit on the environmental committee, the other progressives were able to have a majority of 3 to be able to push back many of the things that wanted to happen, because that's truly that's greenwashing a lot of the things, greenwashing, the policies here. Anyways, I'm at time, but there's a lot of things we could do. I want to thank this committee for the endorsement, for throwing down, for donating, participating in many different ways. We couldn't have done it without you. So onward, my comrades. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hugo. Thank you so much for joining us. Now I'm going to turn it over to some of our comrades who are already building for power in chapters across the country. So first up, we're going to hear from Joel and Lake on their public transit campaign in Detroit, DSA.
Hey folks, it's so good to be with you all. I'm Joel Batterman, a member of Detroit DSA. Also, thought I'd mention co-coordinator of Transit Riders of the United States Together Trust, which is a national network of transit rider groups, many of which are actually DSA adjacent or DSA affiliated. I'll just drop our link here. Lake?
Yeah, thanks, Joel. My name is Lake. I am an organizer in Detroit DSA and member of the YDSA National Labor Committee, and also the chair of the Public Transit Committee in Detroit DSA. And Joel, do you want to go through the slides?
Yeah. So just a little bit about the local context. You may have heard that Detroit isn't exactly known for public transit. The transit campaign that we ran this past fall was actually not in Detroit proper, but in the northern suburbs, primarily, well, a little bit in Macomb County, but also, but primarily in Oakland County. A little local context: Oakland is the wealthiest county in the state of Michigan. Not uniformly wealthy for sure, but quite a contrast with Detroit, poorest large city in the country. Oakland County is where a lot of the region's jobs are located. Most residents of Detroit actually work in the suburbs, but there is very limited transit in the region. And slide, please. Yeah, Oakland County was for more than 2 decades ruled by L. Brooks Patterson, Oakland County executive, who famously or infamously rather said, "I don't give a damn about Detroit. It has no direct bearing on the quality of my life." Not our favorite dude. Slide, please. Yeah, under for decades, transit was limited to the southeast portion of the county. The areas in red had virtually no public transit, and they included, among other places, the largest mall in Michigan, no public transit. Hundreds of thousands of folks living in these areas with no transit. Also, certainly tens of thousands of jobs that folks without a car could not reach. Next slide, please. Back in 2016, there was a regional transit tax proposal that was narrowly defeated, was supported by some elements of capital, but they didn't actually bother to fund a grassroots campaign for it. They just poured a bunch of money into TV ads. And it was very narrowly defeated, almost 50-50 vote in Oakland, though, which surprised many people. Next slide, please. A few years later, Patterson was dead. The Democrats took a narrow majority on the Board of Commissioners and placed a transit tax renewal on the ballot. But that was a bit of a risk, because if it won, there would be transit across the entire county, which would be good. But if it lost, there would be no transit in the entire county, which would not be great. And once again, there was not a really much of a campaign put together to actually make sure that it passed. Next slide, please.
Yeah, thanks, Joel. So this is where our Detroit DSA campaign came into action. So as Joel was saying, this was on the November ballot last year, and Detroit DSA, some of our eco-socialist working group people presented a proposal for this campaign, and it was voted on and passed. And we used it not only as an opportunity to contribute to passing the ballot measure, but also to build up participation in the suburbs. People who were not previously engaged. We went through, we looked at people who had indicated interest in public transportation work, but we had no way to plug them into DSA because we didn't have a public transit campaign. We recruited some of those people. We recruited new people up in those suburbs that don't currently have public transportation, and ran weekly canvases, each of which had more and more people. It was over a dozen people at each canvas, including new volunteers. Slide, please. I think there's only one more though. Yeah, and we won. And this was, there was a major contribution, thousands of doors knocked by Detroit DSA, one with 57% support. And it's notable that we expressed and organized solidarity with these workers throughout the campaign, directly in partnership with TRU and ATU, the bus drivers union. We invited union bus drivers to our November general meeting about a week before the election and launched a canvas from there, which had great participation, seeing as people had just heard from bus drivers directly affected by this. So that's just an example of integrating that kind of labor solidarity into regular DSA organizing work and general meetings. And now we have established a public transit subcommittee within our eco-socialist working group to continue this work, which I chair right now. And this looks like plugging into the ongoing fight to raise wages for our bus drivers in the Metro Detroit area as they expand. So for example, right now they're paid $19 an hour when a living wage in Detroit is closer to $28 an hour. And there is a massive shortage. So Joel knows plenty about this, but we are trying to address this by telling the SPART board to raise the wage. So showing up to protests and just generally showing up and to public hearings and things like that to continue the labor solidarity has been this nice example of like continuity and how a campaign doesn't have to end with an election if you can find that labor relationship. So yeah, that's all I have. So thanks for having me.
Amazing. So inspiring to hear the incredible work that you all are doing in Detroit. Love to see it. All right, so now we're going to skip over some of the Great Lakes. So we're going to go over to our comrade Rose from Maine DSA to talk about their campaign on building public power.
Hi, sorry, my camera's not working right now. So my name is Rose, and I'm going to talk about our public power campaign. Next slide. So basically, to briefly explain what we're trying to do, we're trying to transition our investor-owned utilities into one big statewide consumer-owned utility called Pine Tree Power. Next slide. So basically, if you're not familiar with what a consumer-owned utility is, it's a little bit different than a state-owned utility in that it is owned directly by the ratepayers in the form of a nonprofit. It's essentially like a co-op. And one of the reasons why that is really great is because it gets rid of the profit incentive. So there's no reason to keep increasing utility bills or just taking all of the money out of the state and making rich people richer, and instead goes towards making our grid better. Next slide. So the reason this is actually a really, really important issue in Maine is because of the fact that Central Maine Power is the worst rated utility in the entire country and has been for several years in a row. People really, really hate CMP. And the reason for that is because of the fact that we have the most power outages out of any state in the country. And that's really bad. Next slide. And so even as we're getting this really terrible service, we are paying more than we need to be doing. And that is because of the fact that CMP continued to just keep increasing the prices as much as they want. It's also really important for climate reasons. They have opposed climate legislation, and have dragged their feet about solar hookups, and they don't want to put money into our grid, which we really need to do if we're going to be using more electricity instead of fossil fuels. Next slide. So what do we do about it? So we started by lobbying in the summer of 2021 to pass our legislation. And it did pass. It passed both chambers of our state legislature and passed bipartisan, actually. But unfortunately, our governor, she vetoed it. So next slide. But we didn't let that stop us. So we started collecting signatures for a statewide ballot question in October of 2021. And we continued to do that into the winter, even though it was snowy. And like we were literally collecting signatures in snowstorms sometimes. And it was very cold. And we did not meet the deadline for the 2022 ballot. Next slide. So we took a little bit of a break because it was so cold. And then we started up again in March to go for the 2023 ballot, and all the signatures we'd collected were still valid. And yeah, so we started again in March, and we kept going into the spring and the summer and then into the fall. So we were essentially doing multiple canvases a week for basically an entire year. Next slide. And to give you a sense of geography, those red pins are places that we held canvases, many of them multiple times. Some of the purple ones were other like events that I know some of our members were collecting at. And from that bottom red pin to the top one, to the top red one, is 100 miles. And we literally had people drive that in like from the very bottom of the state to some of those more northern ones, including myself. I was living down there at the time. And that was really great because we were not only talking to voters in progressive places like Portland, but we were also talking to people in more conservative parts of the state. And that was really great because it taught us like how to talk to voters, not just like who are progressives, but like who have, different views. And while still kind of like talking in a way that's like sticks to our socialist principles. So for example, when we were in Portland, we, could talk about climate change. While we were in other parts of the state, we could talk about, reliability and local control and stuff like that. So it's really great. So next slide, which I think is the last one. So we did it. We collected enough signatures to get on the ballot. That's a picture from our big turn-in event. It was a lot of fun. We are not a very large chapter, and we knocked 30,000 doors and collected 20,000 signatures, which was basically a huge portion of the signatures. This would have not gotten the ballot without all of our work. And we had never canvassed as a chapter before. So we literally used this to build our field program, and that we've since used for other campaigns like our rent control campaign. And it just really built our chapter, and it was great. And I think we're all really excited to vote yes this November and make sure it passes. That's all I have. Thank you for letting me gush about how great my chapter is. Thanks so much.
That is so incredibly inspiring. I think someone in the chat asked if you all were adopting. Definitely gonna second that. So thank you. Public power, it is crucial, not only in Maine, but also in New York, right down the coast there. We're now excited to welcome New York State Assembly member Sarah Hanna Shesta. I hope I pronounced that correctly. One of our Green New Deal slate champions, to talk about her work for the Building Public Renewables Act. Sarah Hanna, welcome. Would you care to tell us about how you're working to pass the BPRA and why it's so important?
Yes, and actually the main canvas also reminded me of our own experience canvassing up here in the Hudson Valley. people here really, really want us to buy out Central Hudson, and they're getting very impatient about it. Central Hudson is our electricity and gas utility. Yes, so I'm Sarah Hannah Shrestha. I'm representing Assembly District 103rd in the Hudson Valley in New York. I actually got into the idea of running for office because I was organizing on the bill Public Renewables Act. And what this bill does is it says that if there is a shortage in the amount of renewable energy that New York is producing from the private market, which there is a huge, we've been stuck at a very low percentage of solar, wind, and geothermal for a long time. So it says that if we find that shortage on an annual basis, we should direct New York Power Authority, which is the country's largest publicly owned energy provider, to get involved and lead on building out renewable energy, and also to do it in a way that centers workers, that reinvests, back into our communities, that makes it so that it's not just a technical fix about building renewable energy, but it can be used as a way of transforming our economy and, the way we tend to do business in general. And, the strength of this bill really is that it believes in harnessing the powers of a public space rather than the private market, right? We know that the private market does not deliver. And now that I am in the assembly and I'm on the inside, I can absolutely confirm that the main obstacle is this infinite faith that many people have in the private market / capitalism. A lot of the pushback against the details of our bill and the vision of our bill is to protect the private builders who want more deregulation, who want more subsidies. And in the meantime, they're just not doing a great job of building this renewable energy because their need to make profits is just inherently in conflict with being able to serve people and make a public good for the sake of the public. So we did have an amazing breakthrough. New York is in the middle of coming up with its state budget, and the breakthrough was that the governor included sort of a very basic version of this bill in her executive budget. Unfortunately, her version is just a technical fix that basically authorizes NYPA to build renewable energy if it sees fit. It leaves it to the trustees who are appointed by the governor. And it also removes all of the protections we had around really getting labor involved. We have provisions for using parts that are made in America, for example, bringing labor into conversations as projects are being built. So all of this was removed from her version. We have a provision to bring democracy to NYPA itself, to add labor representatives to the board, environmental justice representatives to the board. So all this has been stripped out and been presented as a technical fix that authorizes NYPA to build renewable energy. So we in the Assembly and in the Senate are making our best effort push to bring it as close to the version of our bill as possible. And the reason I was reminded of our own campaign but by what I just saw in the main campaign is that's very similar to what we did in the Hudson Valley. We also knocked a little over 30,000 doors, and we talked to people about this bill, not just in terms of this is a climate bill, but this is about the working class, right? How the working class will get left behind as utilities are not serving people that they need to, as fossil fuel becomes less reliable, more volatile, and we live in a very hot zone of supply prices being very high and utilities just withdrawing thousands of dollars from customers without warning, just messing up their billing error. So we've been able to make a very good case that we need public power, and people are really into it across the political spectrum. We have lots of independents in our district, for example, and people are really into this idea and sold on why we should have public power. And I think that's really what makes this bill powerful, is that it's not addressing just one or two symptoms. It's trying to address it by shifting the power dynamics from the private market to the public arena. And so we're very excited to be right in the middle of fighting for this right now.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sharhana, for sharing. It's so inspiring to hear, and we believe in you all. BPRA is going to get passed soon. I feel it. Last but not certainly not least, Lizzie Rothwell from Philadelphia, who's here to discuss how they are building safer schools.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. So yes, I'm here from Philly DSA's Education Justice Committee. So this is a campaign that we've really been focusing on this year that grew out of both the fact that we have an ongoing facilities crisis with our schools in Philadelphia. Our public school buildings are just kind of abysmal. It's just like such a stark example of environmental racism. The fact that we send kids and teachers into these buildings that are full of, flaking lead paint, asbestos, and very unsafe air. So we've made this our focus this year. Just to go back a little bit and give you a little bit of history of the campaign. So next slide. So obviously in the spring of 2020, Philadelphia schools all moved to online learning like every other school in the country. And then over that summer, as there was a discussion about whether the next school year starting in fall of 2020 was going to be virtual, hybrid, what exactly, there was more attention paid to the fact that Philadelphia school buildings, alongside every other crisis we have going on inside the buildings, and just basically to give you a picture, we are 5 billion and counting in the hole on deferred maintenance for these buildings of like over 200 school buildings. So that summer, there was attention on the ventilation rates in the classrooms, which had never really been a highlighted bit of what we knew about the buildings before. Like people just hadn't necessarily paid attention to the airflow in those buildings. So we were virtual for most of the 2020-2021 school year. There was a little bit of hybrid right at the end, but basically in the ongoing back and forth discussions about this, that fall, the Philadelphia School District was kind enough to release this whole comprehensive data set of airflow rate tests of every classroom in the city. So that's what you're looking at here. This is provided by the school district. Basically, if you look in the third column, those are the numbers of how many cubic feet per minute of air we're getting pumped into classrooms by mechanical ventilation. There should be 15 cubic feet per minute per person. And you can see that this is my son and now daughter's school. Any classroom on the second and third floor basically has zero air getting pumped in at all. So in the 2021-22 school year, basically, these spreadsheets were released. Then the school district told us, hey, we're fixing things. And then just kind of the conversation just kind of fell away as schools started reopening in person in the spring. And then over the summer of 2021, they were like, you know what, we put these purifiers in all the classrooms. We're going to be fine. It's fine. So I was really concerned that fall. Next slide, please. So the first iteration of this campaign, we were using portable CO2 detectors and basically attaching them to kids' backpacks. This particular one in the picture here is disguised as like a Minecraft toy. And they would log data all day, and then we could look at the data at the end of the day. And essentially the numbers there, CO2 obviously is in the air everywhere, but the concentration of it inside a closed room is basically a proxy for what the airflow rate might be if you also know like the size of the space and how many people are in the space. So basically what we were doing, it was looking at these numbers and confirming like, yep, it's still bad. They said they made repairs, it's still bad, it's still bad. So we were trying to draw attention to this kind of all through, thanks, Dave, all through the 2021-22 school year. And then by the end of last school year, I think that we really felt like we needed to ramp this up, take it to the next level. So next slide, please. So we decided that instead of just, collecting data and analyzing it and trying to get people's attention on it, we were going to start building these filter boxes. So this is an open source design for a DIY air filter. You can make one yourself in about 45 minutes for about $75. So we started building these. Basically, it's just 4 MERV 13 filters taped together with a box fan on the top. Anyone can learn to do it. So next slide, please. This is us in the summer, last summer. So this is one of our first builds. We got a bunch of people from our chapter together, some allies that are concerned about facilities, and we built 7 of these boxes. And then while we were doing this, we were also just trying to reach out to any teachers we knew in the district, any contacts we had in schools, and see what teachers wanted these in our classrooms. So I'd already tried to get our principal to do this. He'd said no, unless it was a district approved thing. So we decided we're just doing it ourselves. And we were going direct to teachers. So this was the first iteration. And then next slide, please. So this is one of our latest builds. We've now moved to, when possible, if we can find a teacher who wants one, we will still try to get a one-off box to them. But now we've been trying to say, hey, schools should really be hosting these builds themselves. We found a couple principals who were supportive of it. So this was a build that we held at an elementary school. The teacher in the back holding the box is actually the head of the Philadelphia Student Union. So he had a group of students that it was basically their after school meeting at which we just crashed it. We came in, we had 2 classrooms full of people building simultaneously, and we built 23 boxes in an hour. So it was really fantastic. So, this is obviously applicable. This whole thing was prompted, of course, by COVID, but these boxes filter, so they do take out asbestos fibers that could be flying around. We also have rodent problems in our school, so any contaminants that are in the air. But they are a Band-Aid, so we definitely see this as a first step to raise people's awareness of the problem, build power within these individual school communities around the city, but also having everyone kind of working towards, yes, they do handle wildfire smoke as well. That's actually one of the early designs of them. That's exactly what they were developed for. But having everybody also working on a common project as well as building within each individual school community. So, and also pushing towards obviously a more comprehensive solution. So these boxes remove contaminants from the air, but they do not introduce fresh air. So, the oxygen levels in the room, they're not exactly dangerous, but they don't promote good learning. Kids fall asleep, all of that. What we actually need, of course, is a comprehensive retrofit solution for these schools. And ventilation will certainly be part of that. When you do a deep energy retrofit of a building, you're usually trying to tighten up the outside envelope of the building in a way that then you have to introduce mechanical airflow as well. So yeah, this is where we are with this. I was really excited. Oh, yes, thank you. We've built over 50 boxes. We put them in 10 schools. We actually are building a whole slew more of them next month. My state representative, who is one of our socialist electeds, reached out to me and said, hey, why haven't you done this in your kid's school yet? And I said, because the principal won't do it. So then he and I went back to the principal together, and now we are in fact doing it in my kid's school next month. So that's amazing. Really nice to just kind of see all the different pieces of the power that we're building, both within elected offices and on our own, coming together around that. Just things specific to Philadelphia or to Pennsylvania, the PA Supreme Court recently ruled that the state is not fairly or adequately funding its K-12 schools. The formula for that has always been unfair. So that's an open question about when we start seeing more money coming to us from the state. The school board recently sued the city over legislation meant to ensure that we had baseline safety standards in our school buildings. Within the past week and a half, 2 more of our schools have shifted back to virtual learning because damaged asbestos was found in them. So this is always a hot thing going on in Philadelphia. And in Philadelphia, we do not elect our school board, so our school board is not great. But we are this spring electing a new mayor and a new city council. So we are working with our endorsed candidates to try to raise awareness about this more. And just really excited about what this is and would love to talk to other chapters who are interested in doing the same thing.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lizzie, for sharing your story. Seriously, chills and tearing up here seeing some of those photos. So thank you so much for sharing. Now that we've heard from some chapters who are already building for power, what would starting to build for power look like in your chapter? The Green New Deal Campaign Commission, or GNDCC, is committed to helping chapters with developing resources, building communication strategies, and providing coaching and training. So I'm going to turn it over to my comrades, my fellow comrades on the GNDCC, to talk more about the areas that they're working to support. First up, we'll pass it over to Johnny to talk about resource development.
Hi, everyone. I'm Johnny, he, him. I'm on the GNDCC. I had the Resource Development Committee. So part of the support we're going to be offering chapters as part of B for P will come in the form of written resources, right? So memos, fact sheets, that sort of thing. These resources are intended to serve as a sort of more durable, circulable means of supporting chapter work, especially in the early stages of campaign planning. So the first resources we're developing focus on the labor movement, right? Given the centrality of working with labor, working with unions to this campaign. Based on interviews with DSA members with decades of experience in the labor movement and alongside it, both in the building trades, in the service sector, and the industrial sector, we're going to be providing chapters with a basic guide on how to conduct outreach to different types of unions, as well as guidance on how to analyze the labor landscape in their local area as it pertains to B4P, right? How do unions think, right? Like if you're running a transit campaign versus a green social housing campaign, there are different sorts of unions involved with different sets of interests, and those are worth thinking through. We're also developing a set of case studies around past campaigns run by DSA chapters and similar formations, such as the Richmond Progressive Alliance here in California, that are like pretty reminiscent of B4P. These case studies, and BPRA is one example, will reflect the different strategic tendencies that are currently predominant in DSA. Our goal is not to present a rigid theory of change or doctrinaire set of tactics, but rather make chapter campaigners aware of the broader debates at history, the broader debates in history at play among DSAers participating in and strategizing under Building for Power. B4P is Building for Power. And with that, I'm going to pass it to my comrade Soleil to talk about comms.
Hey comrades, and thank you so much, Johnny. Yeah, I'm Soleil, and I'm also a part of the Green New Deal Campaign Commission Steering Committee, and I'm really excited to talk to you guys about comms today. And since so many of you are here, you probably encountered our comms work in one way or another, either on Twitter or over email, which is great. I'm glad it worked. But yeah, so for B4P, we really want to make sure that our comrades have the tools they need to take all the stuff they're learning from resource development or from coaching and training, who you'll hear from in just a little bit, and are really able to make sure that their campaigns that they develop are memorable, clear, and moving. So we want to make sure that your campaign has a voice that is able to communicate what you're trying to win, who you are, and why you're doing the work that you're doing. Some of the ways that we can already help you with this is by giving chapters involved with the B4P campaign our messaging guide, but we can also help you develop your own that's more tailored to the different issues and needs of your city. We also are happy to share key tips and tricks to make sure that you are both exciting your comrades in your chapter and bringing more people in as you go, because we don't want to just build for power. We want to build big. We want to make sure that DSA keeps growing. Additionally, we want to make sure that we're clear in our articulation of the campaign. And we want to really be empowering our audience, right? So we know that there's more of us than there ever were of them, but you have to be clear of who the we are and who they are. We can help you once you've pinpointed the bosses, polluters, or other exploitative corporations that are driving down wages and risking community and environmental safety, and showing people who the enemy is and how we need to get past them to win our demands. We also want to make sure we're speaking clearly and with one voice, and showing that when we fight, we win. We saw that clearly in the last few slides from all of our comrades and all of these great chapters across the country. But some of that stuff gets done with the material stuff that we are able to hand out, right? So we can also help you develop lit, flyers, pamphlets. We're happy to shout out your chapters on Twitter, on our website and our blog posts, and make sure we're sharing our beautiful vision. Yeah, just lastly, to wrap up, we know that it's really easy in the environmental world to accidentally pit the people who should be our friends against us, usually labor, and that's not what we're here to do. So we want to make sure that we're cleaning up our campaign messaging so that we're focused on key points of unity that help us unite unions, climate activists, and community members that strengthen our solidarity and build our power. And that's the reason why we're building for power, because we as socialists know that we can't just stop and destroy things that harm our world, although that's important. We also need to present a vision that helps us build the better world that we all know is possible for both the people and our planet. And with that, I'm going to send it over to Mark so we can hear about all of the really cool tactics and strategies that we can use to get this shit done.
Awesome. Thank you, Soleil. So, hey, everyone, my name is Mark. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the co-chair of the Green New Deal campaign, and I'm here to talk to you about coaching and training. So to ensure members organizing a Building for Power campaign in their chapter are moving forward and building a successful effort, chapters will have a campaign coach each step of the way. The campaign coaches will engage with high-touch, one-on-one chapter support with regular check-ins about what stage of campaign development chapters are at, how to advance to the next campaign goal, troubleshoot any issues a campaign is experiencing, gathering resources, and setting up trainings. The broader coaching team that we are building up will also set up like annual cohort calls where DSA chapters running similar campaigns around transit, public power, green social housing, and green public spaces can connect about their campaigns, share ideas about strategy, troubleshoot issues, and create a sense of like campaign and organizational cohesion. In addition to making sure chapters are firing off and kicking ass with their campaigns, our coaches will really aim to build up chapter level cadre organizers that are well-versed in organizing skill sets that are transferable to other areas of work in DSA and benefit the long-term health of the chapter. In terms of trainings, we'll be hosting periodic strategic campaign trainings in partnership with DSA's Growth and Development Committee. We'll be training chapter level campaign leads on how to navigate and internally organize their chapter to support and get it supported and to get members involved with the Build for Power campaign. We will provide more thematic trainings around the specific type of campaign a chapter wants to build and the different variables they will encounter in their campaigning. And a couple of examples of that are a labor training that will teach chapters how to engage with unions through the rank and file and through the existing leadership, and how to work with a socialist in office that the chapter helped elect and leverage that relationship to move forward legislative efforts the campaigns are fighting for. Finally, our coaching team will integrate all throughout the process political education about what is the Green New Deal and what does it practically look like for a chapter to win it locally in their area. Now I'm going to pass it to Kara to talk about next steps.
Thank you so much, Mark, and also to Soleil and Johnny as well. And to all of you, thank you all for listening. It is so inspiring to see so much amazing work happening across the country. I don't know about you all, but I definitely got chills a handful of times, almost teared up. It really is so incredible to see the work that our comrades are doing everywhere. So you might be wondering, what can you do? How can your chapter build for power? So chapters who are interested in taking on these fights locally, we want to either if you have a Green New Deal working group or an eco-socialist working group, or if you want to launch a Green New Deal campaign on one of these priorities, if you want to work closely with us to deploy national resources and trainings or coordinate across the country with some of these amazing comrades that you just heard about. If this sounds like you all, if this is your chapter, then sign up on the intake form that our comrades are going to drop in the chat right now here. Hopefully in just a second, we've got a little intake form. Awesome, there it goes. So sign up, fill out that intake form, and one of our Green New Deal campaign commission comrades will follow up with you all to get you all going. Also, we're going to be launching a second version, or round 2 of our strategic campaigns training that we're running with the GDC, so the Growth and Development Committee. So that's going to be happening later on this month. So keep an eye out for that. Would love if you all are able to join us there. So again, that link is in the chat. Please sign up there. And it wouldn't be a good DSA call if we didn't close out with a bit of Marx, right? So a nice quote from Marx here. Even an entire society, a nation, or all simultaneously existing societies taken together are not the owners of the earth. They are simply its possessors, its beneficiaries, and have to bequeath it in an improved state to succeeding generations. So y'all, thank you so much. So much love to you all. Really looking forward to working with you all and seeing you all build for power in your chapters across the country. Solidarity, comrades. We'll see you all very soon.